This is Money Talks.
Hi, my name is Ibukun Oyedeji, President CFA Society Nigeria. Join me and a host of other financial industry practitioners for Money Talks with CFA Society Nigeria.
Money Talks with CFA Society Nigeria. Let's talk about money.
Hello everyone and welcome to Money Talks. Money Talks is brought to you by CFA Society Nigeria and it's a financial literacy program. Smart Uzechi is my name. You can call me Captain Smart and you'll be financially correct. My guest on the program this evening is Seyi Oshibolu, CFA. Seyi is a consultant in the investment management and private equity practice of Deloitte UK. Based in London, he focuses on assisting global investment management and private equity firms navigate complex capital market transactions, including IPOs, cross-border listings, capital raises, acquisitions, and buyouts, amongst others. He's a CFA charter holder and a fellow of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, ACCA. Seyi is currently a member of the ACCA Global Council. And this evening, we're going to be discussing the basics of buying and selling securities. And that's our subject of discussion this evening. When we return from this very short break, you meet my guest, Seyi Oshibolu, who is seated here in the studio. Please do join us again.
Money Talks.
Money Talks.
Money Talks. Money Talks. Money Talks with CFA Society Nigeria. Let's talk about money.
Welcome back to Money Talks, and Seyi Oshibolu, CFA, is my guest on the program. The subject of discussion here, the basics of buying and selling securities. Just to let you know that you can participate on the program this evening by calling the telephone lines 0700 923 923 923. That's 0700 923 923 923. You can also call 0802 054 4484. That's 0802 054 4484. Or you can send us a message on WhatsApp 0817 313 6193, including recording voice notes and sending to that number. That's 0817 313 6193. Or you can go to the CFA Society social media handles on Twitter. That's formerly that's X right now. You can go to Facebook, YouTube, and even LinkedIn. CFA Society NG. That's where you can find out. Or the website www.cfasocietyng.org. So let's welcome our guests this evening. Seyi Oshibolu, CFA, is seated right here. Good evening to you, Seyi, and welcome to the program.
Hi, Captain Smart. It's nice to be with you. Thanks for inviting.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
So, how do you see Nigeria? You walk out of London, right?
Yeah.
So, welcome to Lagos.
It's nice to be back home.
It's nice to be back home. Okay, you're welcome. So, we're discussing securities this evening and the basics for buying and selling securities. But before somebody thinks we're talking about security as security, so let's start by asking you what financial securities are, because this program is about finances. So, what are financial securities and what types are commonly traded for those who want to buy or they want to sell?
Yeah. So financial securities are basically instruments that are of value and are tradable. So when you have an instrument that carries a value with it and you can buy and sell it, it's basically a financial security. And they come in different forms. So there's the equities, which are the very popular ones. And then we have debt instruments. We have derivatives as well, and then some form of hybrid instruments that combines those characteristics. So if you look at equities, that gives you ownership stake in a company effectively, and because it's tradable, you can then buy and sell it as you wish. And then we have debt instruments, which is just basically giving your money to someone, just same as loaning a company. So it could be securities, debt securities issued by the government or by states or by corporate entities, and then they pay you back at some point in time, or they pay you interest on that. And then derivatives are a bit more complex because derivatives are instruments that derive their value from another underlying items. So such instruments, could be forward contracts. For example, you may enter into an agreement to buy dollars, for example, at a fixed exchange rate at a future date. So such derivative instruments will change in value as the exchange rate in the market between the naira and the dollar changes. And then you have hybrid instruments, which is the fourth one. So that could, for example, be debt instruments that have characteristics of equity as well. For example, they allow you to convert to equity at some future date if the issuer of the debt instrument does not want to redeem it.
Okay, so for there to be buying and selling, so you have the commodity there, which is securities we're talking about. So there has to be a market wherever it is, whether it's a physical place or something. So are those markets here in Nigeria? And if there are such markets, can you tell us what types of securities market that there are in the country?
Absolutely. We've got securities markets in Nigeria. I think taking a step back, markets are generally divided into two. So we have the primary markets and the secondary markets. So for any security that is being traded, it must have been issued at some point initially. So issuance of new shares. So for example, think of banks in Nigeria trying to raise capital, issuing shares. So such are usually done through the primary market if new shares are being issued. If a company is also issuing bonds, new bonds being issued, that's done through the primary market as well. And then we have the secondary markets where trading in existing instruments are done. So buying and selling. That could vary from over-the-counter markets, which is just between you and I, or through a medium like the financial market dealers associations and companies that we have in Nigeria, or it could be through a proper organized exchange where shares, for example, are traded. So if you think of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, for example, so you can trade on shares, you can trade on debt instruments, and even some exchange traded funds as well. So we have such markets in Nigeria.
Oh, wow. So is it then all the securities that are traded like in the stock exchange market?
Yes. So basically, equities and debts are very popular in our side. And for now, I don't think we have publicly traded derivative instruments that are actively quoted. But we also still have some securities that are also outside the organized exchange that are traded over the counter, as I said earlier on. So you may have an entity whose shares are traded outside the organized exchange. So that's also possible. But then most securities tend to be traded in an organized exchange, particularly in our environment.
In case you're joining us now, Money Talks is on your radio. It's a financial literacy program brought to you by CFA Society Nigeria. And of course, my guest this evening, Seyi Oshibolu, CFA, and we're discussing the basics of buying and selling securities. He's been throwing light on it, really opening our eyes to what kind of securities you can buy and where and how they are traded. If you have questions, you can call on the telephone 0700 923 923 923. You can send us a message to 0817 313 6193, or you can actually call the number 0700 923 923 923. That's 0700 923 923 923, or you can also call the number 0802 054 0084. That's 0802 054 0084, or you can call 0814 000923, and you're talking to Seyi right here. If you have questions or you have clarifications to make on the program, you're seeking clarifications on securities, how to buy and sell them, you're welcome to ask those questions on the program. Phone lines are officially open right now. So Seyi, what is the role of the stock exchange then in buying and selling securities, as you have mentioned here?
Yeah, I mean, the stock exchange has very important roles in an economy. So this, as you know, the main objective of the stock market is really to facilitate exchange of funds from one avenue, from one area deficit to an area, from an area of surplus to an area of deficit, and also to facilitate capital raise. So companies that want to raise funds, as you know, for example, some banks are recapitalizing and trying to increase their equity capital. So when those shares have been fully issued, they will start trading on the stock market and people can buy and sell. So another thing is liquidity. So sometimes when you invest, you may have, for example, the intention to hold the instruments for a long period of time, and then life happens or something happens and you decide that you want to for example sell those instruments and use the money for something else. So stock markets provides liquidity at any time, and then obviously because companies are listed on the stock market, it increases the credibility of such entities. And it just shows that they've been able to meet certain requirements of the stock exchange for them to be able to obtain the listing and to have their securities traded in that market. Yeah.
All right. Our phone lines are open now. You can call the telephone number 0700-923-923-923. That's the number to call. 0700-923-923-923 or 0814-0000-923. Hello, good evening to you.
Hello, good evening, Captain.
Good evening to you. Thank you so much for calling. Tell us your name and where you're calling from.
My name is John. I'm calling from Ikeda.
Okay, John, go ahead.
So my question is, how do I evaluate the performance of the security or investment portfolio, just so I can actually avoid scams or pitfalls?
Okay, John, just you listen for the answer. Thank you.
Okay, great question. Actually, I think it all starts with knowing the right investments or entities to invest in. So if we're talking about equities, for example, broadly speaking, there are two ways to do the analysis. There's technical analysis and fundamental analysis. I often say that if you're not, a specialist in this area, you should not be carried away by technical analysis, because that often involves checking charts and trends and trying to predict where the markets will go. But with fundamental analysis, one of the key things is this company that I want to invest in, what do they do? And, do I think that people demand what they do? Because at the end of the day, it comes down to, the financial health of the entity. So typically you want to listen to the news about the entity, read what analysts are saying, check their financial statements, check what's been the growth pattern in their revenue, what's been the growth pattern in their, profits, their cash flows as well. And also you have to be careful to know what your objectives are. So are you an investor looking to invest for the long term, which ideally is what you should do if you're investing in stocks? Or do you have short-term objectives? So all this will vary with, your investment objectives and risk tolerance as well. But it's very important to do a proper analysis of the entity, and there are professionals who can help you with this and also provide some recommendations around companies that are doing very well, which are good opportunities to buy.
And maybe you can just follow up with that answer, because the next question here actually for you. Okay, let's take this message coming in here. This person said, good evening, Captain Smart. What advice can your guest give in respect to investing in treasury bill at this time?
Yeah, interesting question, because I was having a similar conversation with my dad yesterday, who was saying, Seyi, what's the difference between fixed deposit and treasury bills? And, why should I do treasury bills? So I think looking at the rates we have now, obviously coming from inflation and the fact that the central bank is trying to fight inflation, treasury bill rates are quite high. We're looking probably in the 15 to 18%, maybe even higher rates, and I think it's a good time in terms of first off, treasury bills are issued by the government through the central bank, and so they're quite safe. they're naira denominated. It pays you your interest up front, and so you could decide to take your interest up front, or you may even decide to reinvest it to increase your overall return. Yeah, but so I think it's a good one, and sometimes you may even want to look at the stock market and say, what's the stock market paying me, and what are treasury bills paying me, and look at the rates on treasury bills and say they look quite competitive. The downside with that, however, is that treasury bills are typically short-term instruments, so within a year they mature within a year, and so there is no assurance that even if you invest in 365 days treasury bill, for example, that in a year time you will still be able to get that rate. Rates could have come down, it could have gone up, or different things could have happened, and maybe that's where bonds also come in, because bonds are more long dated instruments. But I think the rates look very appetizing at this time.
Okay, the listener, they have actually hijacked the program, so another question has come and said, good evening gentlemen, Nigeria just floated a 500 million domestic dollar bond. What's your advice to discerning investors? And Tony is sending in the question there.
Yeah, I mean, dollar denominated bond just basically means repayments would also have to be in dollars, whether it's the interest. But again, because it's issued by the government, you can still rely on the full faith and credit of the government, and recognize that they are instruments that are largely free from default risks, even though we've seen cases in other economies where countries have defaulted on foreign currency denominated instruments. But I think they are good instruments to look at. I could imagine, I don't know particularly the yields on this one, but I could imagine the yields are very high as well, given the current rating of Nigeria, credit rating of Nigeria, because credit rating often determines the yield that you would have to give debt holder. Obviously, rates are also out there in the markets that are also still high, so it's likely that this will be high. But if this person is talking about credibility, will I get my money back, is it a good option at this time? I think it is. But obviously you always want to compare this with other options that are available. So we have some asset management firms that have dollar mutual funds, for example, or dollar portfolios that you can invest in. So you want to probably do a comparison to see whether you can get a better alternative out there.
Yeah, phone lines are still open, 0700 923 923 923. There's also 0802 054 4484. The basics of buying and selling securities, that's what we're talking about here. Seyi Oshibolu, CFA, is the guest on the program. As we begin to coast home, Seyi, I was asking you to tell us the steps a beginner needs to take, because sometimes you need to avoid some pitfalls, talking to people with experience like you. So what steps does the beginner need to take to actually not make those mistakes so that they can buy and sell securities peacefully, like I said, with peace of mind?
It's a simple question, but it's not necessarily a simple answer.
Wow.
That's because people go into stocks sometimes not well informed. So I think the first thing is really define what you want to achieve and what you can tolerate in terms of risk, because we're talking about investing in treasury bills versus investing in stocks. For example, stocks are riskier. You could put in 1,000 naira and lose a significant part of that money, and you could double it as well. So it could go up, it could come down. So you have to define your objective. Am I in this for the long term? Am I in this for the short term? The funds I want to put in it, hope I won't need it for the next 1, 2, 3 years, and all of that. And then do I have alternative sources of funding? Should I need emergency funding or need to invest in some other things? Would I be stressed such that I have to liquidate my positions? I think those are things you will need to consider before you start the journey. And then once you decide your investment horizon and objectives you're looking at, you probably want to then say, how do I also spread my risks while I invest? So probably you want to have a buffer, some sort of emergency funding which you are investing in, something you can easily access. So whether it's interest-paying accounts or, even some of these funds, mutual funds that you can put those amounts in that you can easily withdraw as you need it. And then if for the longer term ones, so for example, for equities, then you would have to do a proper analysis. What sectors do I want to invest in? Am I very confident in the banking sector, for example, or in the FMCG sector, or in healthcare, oil and gas, and telcos and things like that? So it's important to diversify, and that's why we also have what we call exchange traded funds. So ETFs are, pretty much instruments on their own, but they give you access to multiple equity instruments. So for example, you could have an ETF that tracks the performance of the top 30 largest listed entities on the floor of Nigerian Stock Exchange. So that way, by just buying a single instrument, you are effectively dividing your money into those top 30 entities, and that gives you some sort of diversification. But again, coming back to fundamental analysis I talked about, and Warren Buffett used to say something: he would only invest in what he knows. I want to know what you're doing. So he's been holding companies like Coca-Cola for years, and that's because we know Coca-Cola would always sell. So and things like that. So as an investor, yeah.
All right, so go back to the feedbacks because we're running out of time.
Hello, Captain. Good evening. So I'm asking another one. What is the impact of market volatility on these financial securities? And then again, do tax implications impact investment decisions, or is it just a go-ahead?
Okay, so you take it in addition to these questions. Good evening, Captain. Hi, Seyi. So I want to ask, what's the market volatility? How stable are the prices? Mary from Abulegba with a question, and the last one for the evening because of time: what is the difference between actively managed and index funds, and which might be best for a beginner investor? And that's Kemi in Ikoyi. Seyi, you just have 3 minutes to deal with these questions.
Okay, so I'll just take the market volatility together. So there are so many things that can cause market volatility, and market volatility could be short term, it could be long term as well. So market volatility could be caused by economic issues, for example. So there may be a new data release, economic data release, that causes a panic in the market. It could also be industry specific issues that may also result in. I think what's more important for those that want to invest in equities is not to really be extremely bothered about prices are up today, they are down tomorrow. There's really no evidence that suggests that people are perfect when it comes to timing the market. It's really about identifying sound companies. Go in when you think it's appropriate, if you can, if you believe the price is right, and then believe that the company will be able to do very well, over the long term. I think that's really what's important. Market volatility could be caused by anything, to be honest. Sometimes it's even caused by, issues outside our shores, which is affecting a particular sector where an entity is operating in. And I think the second sector, question the gentleman asked was related to, sorry, if you could remind me, Captain, I don't.
The guy who asked the second question. Okay, I'll just play it back for you.
Hello, Captain. Good evening.
Tax, so I think it's about.
I'm asking another one. What is the impact of market volatility on these financial securities? And then again, do tax implications impact investment decisions, or is it just a go-ahead?
Tax definitely does. You should plan to consider how taxes could impact your returns over the long term or over the short term. So for example, government securities are often tax free, but when you invest in stocks and, for example, maybe you sell some of those stocks or you get paid dividend, you may have to consider the tax implications on some of those securities. And if you invest in fixed deposits, for example, or some sort of instrument that are issued by an entity, a debt instrument, you may also have to pay tax on such instruments. So I would say seek a professional advice in deciding how to structure your portfolio to ensure that it's optimal from a tax perspective. And I think the last question is around actively managed and index funds, and what should the beginners consider. So an actively managed portfolio is just basically one that would involve a lot of activity, buying and selling to try to beat the market. So we have the Nigerian All-Share Index, for example, which is the yardstick for measuring the performance of the market as a whole on a daily basis, as an example. So what active traders often try to do is to engage in activities to see how they can beat the return from the market or any particular index that they have been, that their performance has been benchmarked against. Really, I would tell a beginner that there is no evidence that active portfolio managers consistently beat the market. So the more important thing is hold a diversified portfolio, invest in sound companies. And so maybe that's where an index fund comes in. So an index fund like the ETF I talked about, for example, will allow you to diversify by just investing in a single instrument, and that way you can have a bit of a rest of mind as you go through your journey.
Yeah, that's it. This is a master class, I can tell you, by an expatriate consultant. So that's Seyi Oshibolu, CFA. He works out of London, where he's a consultant in the investment management and private equity practice of Deloitte UK. And we've been talking about the basics of buying and selling securities. Seyi, thank you very much for coming this evening, for taking our time to talk to us here.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate you. I will hope to see you again soon on the program. It's been quite an education here tonight. That's our package. We'll see you again next time. Till that time, if you need to buy or sell securities, Seyi says, talk to a professional. Thank you for your time. Smart Uzechi is my name. Have a good evening.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Money Talks, hosted by the CFA Society Nigeria. Stay connected with us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, and YouTube at CFA Society Nigeria. Follow us for more financial insight and updates. Keep a date with us next time.